The whole thing started with a pipe, a simple PVC pipe that appeared out of nowhere, running along the side fence of my yard. I'm the kind of person who notices this kind of thing, because I like my house organized, my plants watered with what's mine, in this case, rainwater stored in a system I installed myself, with gutters, filters, and a 300-liter reservoir. It wasn't just a personal project, it was pride, something I'd put together with my own hands after watching hours of YouTube videos and spending more than $200 on materials that the plumber on the corner called the stuff of stubborn people. But it worked. It rained, the water ran off, was filtered, and stored to be used on the plants, to wash the garage and, when necessary, even in emergencies. It was my water, literally. The sky sent it, the roof collected it, and I used it. It was as simple as that. Then the pipe appeared, disguised among the neighbor's vegetation, coming out of the back of her house and sneakily connecting to the base of my water collector. The first time I saw it, I thought it was a coincidence. Perhaps an old drainage pipe, perhaps an extension to her system that had been connected incorrectly by mistake. Mistake, mind you, because I like to believe that people aren't naturally slack. I went there, rang the bell. She appeared with that artificial smile that looked like it had been drawn with a ruler. She was wearing an HOA t-shirt with "Preserve and Serve" printed on it, and holding a mug that said "Ecological Leader," a ready-made comedy. I asked, with all the politeness in the world, if she knew of a pipe coming from the direction of her house to my water system. She frowned, as if that was the most absurd thing she had ever heard. She said that she would never do anything like that, and that she didn't know what I was talking about. So I thanked her, said good afternoon, and left. The next day, the pipe was painted green, to camouflage it. On the third day, there was a decorative ribbon with the excuse that it was themed decoration for Environmental Awareness Month. She was no longer disguising it. She was mocking. And worse, my water, which used to fill up in 2 days of rain, now barely reached the minimum level. The HOA, of course, pretended not to see. After all, she was the president. And for them, everything she did had a higher community purpose. She could plant potatoes on the roof, and they'd call it a futuristic vertical garden. Meanwhile, she was enlarging the garden. She set up green islands in the backyard, announced meetings about saving water, and posted photos of her organic garden in the neighborhood group with captions like, "Made with 100% natural resources." Even too natural, since it wasn't from her tap that liquid miracle came. I set up a discreet monitoring system, a camera on the fence, a flow sensor in the pipe, and a trap that captured images whenever the level of the water tank fluctuated outside the norm. In less than a week, I had a dossier, videos, schedules, even images of her husband sneaking around the pipe with a head flashlight, as if he were defusing a nuclear bomb. The icing on the cake? The fact that she was preparing for her daughter's birthday party, an event she had been advertising for months as the celebration of children's sustainability. Invitations with seeds instead of paper, a lactose-free cake, recycled toys, and, of course, a full swimming pool. The pool, which until recently, she said, was an unsustainable water resource for times of drought. Guess what water she was filling the pool with? That's right, mine. Can you understand the irony? The woman spent her days campaigning to ban the use of hoses in the neighborhood, sending out pamphlets on conscious hygiene, and criticizing those who washed their cars at the weekend. And at night, she discreetly diverted the water from my gutter to her reservoir, which in turn fed a children's pool 3 meters in diameter. I looked at that and thought, everything has a limit, and hers had passed. A lot. I tried to appeal to logic. I wrote a polite email with graphs, photos, prints of the sensors. I sent it straight to her. The reply came 3 hours later in a printed text delivered by a local child in an envelope with a eucalyptus scent. We suggest that, in the name of the collective good, all rainwater resources be shared consciously. Your water collection can be a noble gesture if you learn to see beyond individual property. She really wrote that. In those words, as if I were the selfish one in the story. That's when I decided. I wasn't going to complain anymore. I wasn't going to ask anymore. I was going to redirect. If she wanted my water, she would have it. All of it, but all at once, on the day of the party. The plan wasn't complex. It was strategic. It didn't involve breaking anything. It didn't require crime or scandal. It just required calculation and patience. Something she never had. As for me, I waited for weeks. Every rainy day was a rehearsal. Every drop was a reminder of the absurdity I was about to return. Since she rerouted my gutter, I've adapted the manifold system. I included a discrete reverse valve, a simple mechanism that worked with an accumulation sensor. When the reservoir level exceeded 75%, a silent alarm would go off inside my app. From then on, instead of storing, it redirected. And where to? To her return system. The pipe she installed herself, camouflaged, painted green, hidden under fake leaves and pretty phrases from an ecological pamphlet. The beauty of revenge was in its delicacy. It stole little by little, sneakily. I returned it all at once. During the tests, I used buckets. I ran simulations. I observed how the water behaved on different slopes. The force of gravity is a faithful ally when you understand that it doesn't argue with anyone. And deep down, I knew that her weak point was her own confidence. She thought she was winning, that no one would have the courage to stand up to the protector of the green, the eternal president of the HOA, the woman who knew the rules because she made them herself, printed them out, and handed them out in lavender-scented envelopes. Her daughter's birthday was on Saturday. Theme party, Little Guardians of Nature. An invitation in cursive, a mascot drawn by a child, and a timetable with activities such as symbolic planting, conscious bathing in the pool, and sun ceremony with tribal dance. If it wasn't annoying, it would be comical. On Friday night, a storm rolled in, as if the universe had decided to cooperate with my little operation. Distant lightning, swollen clouds, the kind of weather that fills cisterns in a matter of minutes. I set everything up. I adjusted the app. I watched the water level rise centimeter by centimeter as I leisurely sipped tea. At 2 a.m., I got the alert. The tank was full. I manually activated the valve. 3 clicks. The flow was released. The water followed the planned route, passed through the pipe, rounded the bend, and flowed straight into her system. A hydraulic loop fed by arrogance. The pool began to receive not only her rainwater, but mine too. And more than that, the pressure of the flow generated a buildup in the secondary pipes, those that weren't prepared to receive double the volume in a matter of hours. At 7 a.m., the party started. Children arrived with recyclable backpacks, parents taking photos, biodegradable balloons being attached to tree branches. The pool was there, smiling, light blue, adorned with turtle and flamingo-shaped buoys. Everything seemed under control. Then came the first warning. The surrounding grass began to crack. It wasn't mud, it was waterlogging. One of the mothers slipped while trying to take a photo of her daughter. Her feet sank, her shoe got stuck, and she fell to her knees. The water flowed over the edge of the pool as if trying to escape. It didn't take long for chaos to ensue. A child slipped. Then another. The bouncy castle, inflated with solar energy as she was so proud to say, began to float. The ground was no longer absorbing anything. The pool, filled to the brim, began to spill over in waves. The backyard became a pond. The ecological plants floated like castaways. One of the parents tried to help, fell in too, got his cell phone wet, and cursed loudly. She rushed to control the situation. She turned off the pump, grabbed buckets, shouted for help. She tried to blame the rain. She tried to say it was a natural excess, that it was climate change's fault. But all it took was for a neighbor, the one on her left, to utter the phrase that no one has forgotten. That's strange, isn't it? The water in my gutter disappeared yesterday. Maybe it found its way back. The woman froze. For a moment, I could see that she understood, that it made sense. Her eyes fixed on the overflowing pool, her mouth half closed and her hands dirty with mud. There, in the middle of the conscious bathing party, she was drowned by her own greed. Of course, nobody confirmed anything. I never said a word. No broken pipes, no exposed wires, nothing illegal. Just a gentle, ecological, silent redirection. A gift back to those who insisted on sharing natural resources. A few days later, the HOA tried to issue a statement saying that the incident during the children's event was due to unpredictable excessive rainfall, and that no member of the community should be held responsible for natural phenomena beyond human control. The same HOA that banned old Jenkins' Christmas lights for excessive visual glare. Meanwhile, my collector continues to work, cleaner than ever, and with a new extra valve. You never know when solidarity might need to be reactivated. The party became a joke throughout the neighborhood. Apparently, nothing unites a community more than a swimming pool overflowing with mud during a children's spiritual ceremony led by a woman who called Rainwater a collective resource. On Monday, the videos started circulating. It's not clear who recorded it first, but all it took was a record of the flamingo floating down the sidewalk with ambient music still playing in the background to get things off the ground. The WhatsApp group on the street became an arena for sarcasm. Messages came in waves. Umbrella emojis, comments about the ecological tsunami, and even pictures of the inflatable castle with rescue boats around it. Those who had previously been afraid to talk about it now seemed to break free en masse. All it took was a stumble, a literal overflow, for her bubble of power to begin to crack. But as expected, the woman didn't back down. On the contrary, she spent the whole week handing out leaflets with preventative drainage tips, trying to turn her own embarrassment into an opportunity to reinforce her control. She said that the rain was abnormal, that the neighborhood's drainage system was outdated, and that the HOA needed more power to implement emergency water rules. That's right, it was proposing regulations on the use of gutters, catchment limits, and even the supervision of individual reservoirs. The final straw? A suggested clause prohibiting any citizen from redirecting rainwater without prior authorization from the association. And as justification, it attached a spreadsheet that supposedly showed irregular water flow patterns in the days before the event. It was delirium turned into an official document. The reaction was immediate. A petition started circulating, led by none other than old Jenkins, the same one who had his Christmas lights censored. He created a campaign called Free Rain, with T-shirts, bumper stickers, and even a logo. It was a smiling umbrella, ridiculous but effective. More than 60% of residents signed up in 3 days. People who didn't even know what an HOA regulation was now cared. The tone was clear. No one would accept living under the yoke of a woman who thought she could legislate even over what the sky poured down. Meanwhile, she tried to contain the damage. She sent long, circular messages with texts full of technical terms and pseudo-scientific justifications. She quoted articles from obscure blogs, spoke of non-consensual precipitation, and even invented a new term, flooding due to neighborhood negligence. Those who read it had two possible reactions, laughter or despair, sometimes both. But what she didn't expect was what would come from above, literally, because the following week, another rainstorm hit, more intense. Only this time, no one touched any redirects. No reverse engineering, no secret plan. It was just water, lots of it, the way nature likes to send it. And guess who hadn't fixed the backyard drainage system yet? That's right, her. That pool, now with half the air that used to inflate it with morale, was there, serving as a reminder of the failure. The earth around it still damp, the lawn recovering, the plants without flowers. The scene of the disaster was now an elegant swamp. The new rain was enough to reactivate the flow of the poorly connected pipes. There was no overflow, but the pressure made the water recede. Yes, back up. It returned through her drainage pipes straight to the flower bed in front of the house. What had been a decorative garden became a pond. The sensory space for ecological meditation was drowned in mud. And this time she couldn't blame anyone. There was no sabotage, just incompetence and an accumulation of bad decisions. She tried. She sent a technician, yelled at the poor guy in the yard, and even used a hairdryer to help with the accelerated evaporation. But it was no use. The problem was structural, not atmospheric. The HOA, pressured by the petition, called a special meeting. And that's when it all came crashing down. The residents demanded a complete revision of the bylaws. They rejected the new rules she had proposed, and they formally asked for her removal as president. During the meeting, she tried to argue. She talked about systemic vision, climate leadership, and even cited a supposed degree in community rain management that nobody could find anywhere. But no one else was listening. It was as if everyone had suddenly taken out their earplugs. The spell of sound control was broken. One resident summed up the general feeling with a single sentence. "You've spent so long wanting to control even the sound of the rain that you've forgotten that, in the end, it falls where it wants to." The vote was quick, unanimous. For the first time in years, she was officially removed from office. She left the assembly without looking at anyone, walked straight through the drenched garden, went home and locked the gate. She didn't answer any more emails. She didn't post any more notices. Her sustainability blog was deactivated the next day. The neighborhood breathed. For the first time in a long time, it breathed without fear of a bulletin. And the rainwater? It's still falling. Free, without owners, no thieves, and, thanks to the irony of fate, no more redirections. But the final touch was still missing. The story could have ended with her ousting, with the ornamental swamp replacing the pompous garden and peace newly inaugurated in the HOA group. But, like any self-respecting saga, it needed an epilogue, that moment that seals the character's fate and engraves her name in the collective memory as a warning of what not to do when you completely lose your sense of reality. And that ending came on a Sunday, with a clear sky and the smell of barbecue in the air. It was the neighborhood's first official event after the fall of the regime. A simple get-together, organized by ordinary residents, with no obligatory theme, no eco-friendly attire, and no pamphlet stuffed in letterboxes with rules about the volume of conversation or the direction of the wind. Everyone brought a dish, a drink, and a chair. Simple, functional, peaceful. It almost looked like a celebration of civil liberty. In the center of the community park, where she used to erect the rules tents and give speeches about sensory pollution, there was now just an awning with snacks, a loudspeaker playing 80s light rock, and a group of children running free, barefoot and covered in grass and dirt. It was almost an affront to her old reign, and it was deliberate. The thing is, nobody invited her, not out of spite, simply because nobody thought of her. That, more than any formal punishment, hurt. Being ignored was the deepest wound. The neighborhood that had previously bowed to her demands now lived well without the aesthetic patrol and the noise charts at inappropriate times, but she showed up anyway, alone, without flyers, without a clipboard, without her HOA t-shirt. She was wearing a baggy gray sweatshirt and carrying a reusable bottle, as if she were a ghost of herself, trying to prove that she was still part of it all. She stopped on the sidewalk, watched the movement for a few minutes, and, for the first time in a long time, wasn't noticed. No one ran up to her. No one commented on her name. She was just another figure standing on the sidelines, with no role, no speech, no stage. Until one of the neighbors, the same one she tried to fine for using a hose in the afternoon, approached her. He picked up a folding chair, pointed at her with an almost cordial gesture, and said, "Sit down. Barbecue is good today." Even the water cooperated this time. She hesitated. Her pride wavered for a second, and, perhaps out of need, or just the human impulse not to look completely defeated, She took 3 slow steps and sat down, alone, far away, but still there, present, silent. At last, the party continued. The sun lowered slowly. Someone turned on the solar reflectors she hated so much, and they softly illuminated the square. A couple put music on their cell phones, without worrying about decibels. And when the first raindrops began to fall, no one ran. It wasn't much. A fine, timid drizzle. Clean, light, late afternoon water. The sound of the rain hitting the leaves, the awnings and the chairs was exactly what she had spent years trying to control. But there, at that moment, there was no power. Just the sound of nature laughing quietly at the obsession of someone who believed she could rule even the sky. She remained seated. She didn't speak to anyone, but she didn't leave either. The water bottle in her hand, empty, her sweatshirt slowly soaking through, and a strange expression on her face. I couldn't tell if it was frustration, regret, or just the bitter acceptance that he had lost. Not just the presidency, but the chance to belong to something real. When the rain increased, some ran under the awning. Others laughed and carried on eating. She stayed there, and, for the first time, no one asked to turn off the music, turn down the conversation, or respect the time. The next morning, old Jenkins stopped by her house and saw a new detail. The green pipe, the one that used to divert my water, had been ripped out. In its place was a hole barely plugged with stones. It was the end of an era. The last connection between the thirst for control and the water it didn't know how to use. From then on, it rained for everyone, without interference, as it should have been from the beginning. The HOA survived. So did the neighborhood, and the rainwater kept coming, going, wetting the ground without asking permission. And if you liked this video, don't forget to leave a comment and a like.